I guarantee that for a lot of people that are interested in the UFO phenomena and the UFO topic in general, I guarantee that the Men in Black was one of those topics that got you interested in the first place. For me, the story of the Men in Black was one of a few stories that really got me interested in the UFO phenomena and helped me in that deep dive into the UFO topic and started my journey down that rabbit hole, which is the UFO phenomena. So over the past few years, I've really researched the Men in Black, and I've dug deep into archives um, and cases and testimonials and stories to try and find out who the Men in Black really are and what their origins are. Within this video, we're going to look at that. So we're going to look at the origins of the Men in Black. We're going to look at the evidence that supports their existence and some of the famous cases that they were involved in, the skepticism and why that skepticism is there, and the evidence for the skepticism, but ultimately who the Men in Black really are, what agencies they belong to, and what actually happened to the Men in Black. I think I have traced back the origins of the Men in Black to the 27th of June, 1947. And here's how the story goes. On the 27th of June, 1947, in Maury Island, which is about 20 kilometers south of Seattle in Washington, a man named Harry Dahl would essentially become a figure of UFO legend. On that day, Harry Dahl, whilst out gathering logs and bringing them back to his boat, allegedly witnessed a UFO event. That UFO event would later become known as the Maury Island Incident. The event itself is quite spectacular. According to Harry Dahl, 6 donut-shaped craft appeared out of nowhere above his boat, hovering at about half a mile above his boat. They were hovering for multiple minutes, and again, according to Harry Dahl, one of those craft dropped out of the sky for seemingly no reason, followed by a large amount of metal debris. That craft crashed to the ground. Again, allegedly, according to Harry Dahl and other witnesses that were at that event and witnessed the same thing, the debris that fell behind that UFO, that donut-shaped craft that crashed to the ground, injured Harry Dahl himself, injured his son, injured a third witness called Fred Crimson, and killed their family dog. From digging in the archives, and you have to dig deep, and remember this is a UFO encounter that has been classified for nearly 100 years. From digging deep in the UFO archives and the National Archives, I have found one image which seems to be linked to that account. Now, according to Harry Dahl and Fred Crimson, they took multiple pictures of these donut-shaped craft, all of which have disappeared into the mist, which seems to happen so often with UFO encounters, especially from that period of time. But one image seems to have survived. Now, don't hold me to it. It's hard to verify with 100% accuracy an image that was taken nearly 100 years ago that's been linked to a UFO encounter that's been classified for nearly as long. But this image seems to have survived. And this image does align to sketches and drawings that Harry Dahl and Fred Crimson and his son all made as part of their testimonials to this UFO encounter. This is where the Men in Black make their first appearance, their first documented appearance. So this is Harry Dahl. There's some really strange circumstances around this UFO encounter and the first documented appearance of the Men in Black. Before we get into that, let's not forget that this event took place on the 27th of June 1947. That's 14 days before Roswell, which took place on the 10th of July 1947, and is probably the UFO event that really kicked off the global interest in UFOs. So this encounter with Harry Dahl and the first appearance of the Men in Black happened 2 weeks before the biggest UFO story of all time even occurred. We'll get into that a little bit more later in the video. But back now to the supposed first documented encounter of the Men in Black. So if you can imagine now, it's the next day. It's the 28th of June 1947. Harry Dahl claims, along with the other witnesses, that he and the other witnesses have not spoken to anybody about the encounter of the previous day. So that's Harry Dahl, that's Fred Crimson, that's his son, all claim that they have spoken to nobody. At around midday on the 28th of June 1947, a man turns up at Harry Dahl's house. This man is dressed in black from top to bottom. He arrives in a black Buick sedan. My understanding is it has no number plate. The man refuses to show ID, but he does demand that Harry Dahl come with him to a diner in a town called Tacoma to discuss the case. What's remarkable is this man, this Men in Black agent, let's refer to this man as that, knows all about the events of the previous day. He knows what Dahl, Crimson, and the son have seen. He knows all about the event. He knows about the craft and how many there were. He knows that Fred Crimson and Harry Dahl took photographs, which, if none of them have actually even spoken about the event yet, it's a very strange situation. It is at this diner where this man, this Men in Black agent, essentially begins to threaten Dahl. He demands the handover of all evidence. He threatens Dahl directly. He threatens Dahl's family, and tells Dahl in no uncertain terms that if he speaks about this event, or Fred Crimson or the son speaks about this event to anyone else, he will essentially be killed along with his family. That's a pretty typical Men in Black story. You know, when you think of the Men in Black, even, you know, recent Men in Black claims, it always seems to be the same thing. These strange agents turn up, take evidence, threaten the witnesses. This is the first ever documented case of the Men in Black, and it happened straight away. This is what Dahl says. After gathering the evidence, this man then leaves. And that's the first ever documented case of the Men in Black. There is a huge amount more to be discussed with this Maori Island incident, which I'm going to actually do in another video, because it's a crazy, from this point onwards, from the 28th of June onwards, 1947, some really crazy things happen. People do get killed. People start getting ill. There's plane crashes. And what's really strange is not too long after the event, Harry Dahl, this is, by the way, by this point, I'm not sure what day, 29th, whatever, of June, the media is involved as well. But Harry Dahl does then go on to publicly announce that the entire thing was a hoax, which then later in his life he retracts and suggests that the hoax was being forced on him by the Men in Black. So it's now 1953. We're in a town called Bridgeport, which is in Connecticut in the USA. an ex-Army Air Force pilot that fought in the Second World War, so a decorated Air Force veteran from the Second World War, named Albert Bender, would now take part in what would now be an infamous encounter with the Men in Black. Following Albert Bender's honorable discharge from the US Air Force, he began experimenting with meditation, consciousness, and he established an organization called the International Flying Saucer Bureau. What the International Flying Saucer Bureau did is not too dissimilar from the CE5 program that Dr. Stephen Greer now runs. If you know much about the CE5 programs, it's essentially a mass meditation theory that enables groups of people through joined consciousness and meditation to basically make contact with extraterrestrial and interdimensional beings, and even summon interdimensional beings and UFOs. That's what the theory suggests. Stephen Greer's got a lot of evidence to suggest that this actually works, and there will be a separate video going through all of Stephen Greer's evidence, and some of it is just mind-blowing. The images that Dr. Stephen Greer claims to be real aliens and interdimensional beings and craft and light beings is quite extraordinary. Albert Bender was doing this in the 1950s through his International Flying Saucer Bureau. The story suggests that as Bender's research was growing stronger, as the following for his bureau was increasing, the cases, the UFO cases across Connecticut started to basically go through the roof. So as he and his followers were meditating more and understanding consciousness more, they were able to summon more UFOs, and there were just a flurry of UFO events and cases that coincide across Connecticut with Albert Bender's bureau and what they were doing. And that is when the Men in Black turn up. So in July 1953, Albert Bender is visited by three men dressed in matching black uniforms. Albert described them as all wearing the same black clothes. They looked like clergymen, but they all wore hats similar to Homburg style. And for those of you that don't know what a Homburg style hat is, one is appearing on the screen now. According to Bender, the three Men in Black agents telepathically told him to cease his research, to stop all UFO work, and to stop publishing his data. They threatened him telepathically and, again, in no uncertain terms, threatened him with death if he did not cease all of his research and publication of work. The Men in Black confiscated some of his research, and then Bender claims that they simply left. And this is where it gets a bit strange with this case. According to Bender, as the agents left, they disappeared into a yellow fog that had a strong smell of sulfur, which penetrated his whole house, including his attic, and lingered for a long time. That's a little bit hard to swallow. That it's almost like he's suggesting these agents just walked away farting. That's what comes in my head. You know, the eggy smell as the men walked off farting. I don't buy that bit. That seems a bit strange. I mean, it could have happened. We don't know. But the rest of the story is a legitimate Men in Black counter. Three men turn up, and they do from the 1950s onwards tend to be in twos or threes. Threats, confiscations, and disappearing. So a genuine Men in Black encounter, except for that weird sulfur and fog part to it. Bender's paranormal experiences essentially became stuff of legend. They were told to the media, and Bender himself became essentially a man of UFO legend. He later published a book called The Flying Saucers and the Three Men. I have that book and I've read that book, and it's really interesting. You can get it on Amazon, and it's really worth a read because it gets a lot more insight into his experiences for the UFO event, where he was a fighter pilot, and some of the things he witnessed as a fighter pilot, his experiences following his honorable discharge, this obvious UFO meditation and consciousness research that he conducted, the Men in Black experiences, and then paranormal experiences that he then continued to have his entire life. So if you haven't got that book, I would really suggest buying it.
I've seen 4.
Right.
That, I've seen 4. So 2 in a high altitude sighting, and 1 fairly close at the farm a couple of years ago. And then 1 really, really weird one in Montreal, at the 23rd floor of the Queen Elizabeth Hotel. I'm sitting there with some friends, and I see this. It looked like an air mattress, but 100 feet long by 50 feet wide, tipped over with the bulbs on the bottom, and it was moving slowly, and just it stopped, and then it turned, and it went out over the river, and we were going, what's that thing,
So everybody knows Dan Aykroyd. Dan Aykroyd is a well-loved actor, definitely one of my favorite actors from the 80s and early 90s. Very wealthy guy, highly credible, very smart, has nothing to gain from telling stories that are untrue. There's no money to be earned, there's no fame to be earned. So very, very credible, and claims to have had 4 UFO encounters himself, including a very cool certainly cool from a story perspective, not so cool from his perspective, but a genuine Men in Black encounter. So in 2002, so fairly recently, Dan Aykroyd was filming the final episode of a paranormal TV show called Out There. Whilst filming, he was on set. He stepped out to take a phone call, which he claims was from Britney Spears. Whilst stepping out of the set onto the street, he noticed a car, a black Ford sedan, parked across the street with no number plate. There was a man inside the car. The man stepped out of the car, a very pale white male, tall, in an all-black suit, just standing by the car, staring directly at Dan Aykroyd, and Dan Aykroyd staring directly back at him. This went on for over a minute, which isn't long, but if you're Dan Aykroyd in that situation, staring at some strange-looking guy in an all-black suit that's just across the street staring straight back at you, that minute probably felt like hours. According to Aykroyd, just for a second, he turned away and looked back, and that man and that car had gone. And this was on a one-way street, so there's no way the car could have gone past him. Just 2 hours after that Men in Black encounter, Dan Aykroyd got a call from the producers of his show Out There to tell him that the entire season that he had filmed, bearing in mind he was doing the final episode on that day, so the entire season had been filmed, the entire season had been cancelled, and that he was to stop filming immediately. Dan Aykroyd claims that he was never ever given any justifications for this cancellation, and he sticks to this day. He was on a show with Joe Rogan recently. He sticks to his story to this day that he was just cancelled without reason following that Men in Black encounter, and he does claim that they, or at least accept that within that paranormal TV show Out There, there were UFO cases being discussed in there, and he is a known ufologist, a very credible, very genuine Men in Black encounter from a very well-known individual actor. I think that in itself is probably one of the most credible UFO encounters, Men in Black encounters of all time. However, the next one comes with a very famous, a very well-known piece of footage, which I think undeniably confirms that the Men in Black exist. So this piece of footage is like a legendary Men in Black encounter recorded at a hotel lobby. I'm sure anybody that's researched the Men in Black topic has come across this, but this is probably the most convincing Men in Black piece of footage that it actually exists, and there's a story behind it. But let's watch the footage first. So according to the witnesses, which we'll get into just after this video continues and finishes. According to the witnesses, these beings, these Men in Black agents rather, were very tall, almost featureless, very pale. Obviously, as we can see, they are in that typical Men in Black attire, but they were almost alien looking, is the way that they were described. Not human looking at all, featureless, no expression on their face, very, very pale. And this was witnessed by multiple people. So that video is probably the most famous Men in Black footage ever recorded. Whilst there's lots of very good pictures and case studies and testimonials, in terms of actually video footage, that's about as good as you're going to get. And that was recorded in 2008, so relatively recently. You could argue that it's just two men walking into a hotel lobby, businessmen. I'd argue against that. They don't look like businessmen. They're very tall. They're very thin. They're both wearing exactly the same clothes. There is another person in the background that they walk past, and they're much taller than that person. They look very strange. And even though it's a grainy security camera video, you can see the paleness in their face. And yeah, I would be, if I was working in that hotel and they walked in, I would, they're 7 foot tall as well. Remember, I would be sort of taken aback by it myself. So the story goes that Shane Savar, who was the hotel manager, along with some other employees, including a security guard, had witnessed a UFO event the night before. They hadn't told anybody. The next day, these Men in Black come to the hotel to talk to them, and in true Men in Black style, Savar and the other witnesses are threatened, told not to go to the media, and the Men in Black leave. And that's the story. Savar and the other witnesses have been interviewed many times and have claimed many times that these Men in Black were alien looking, very tall, very slim, featureless, and didn't look human. I think the Men in Black are real. I think there's enough evidence out there to suggest that the Men in Black are a real, secret, potentially government, potentially alien agency of some kind that have been for decades terrifying witnesses of UFO encounters. Now, as disclosure comes closer, and we are very close to disclosure, I think these Men in Black cases seem to have shrunk. I guess that's because governments are getting closer to telling us the truth. But I'm very keen to know your thoughts. What do you think? Do you think the Men in Black are real? Or do you think it's all bullshit and fake news and just part of that fake news agenda to confuse us? Leave some comments and please do subscribe rather to our social media channels. And I'll be back soon with another video.